Hi, welcome to From Writer to Author, a free webinar that will help you take the next step on your writing journey. I'm so glad that you're here with me. First thing I want to share with you is how I know what I'm going to share today on From Writer to Author. How I know is I have been writing for over 10 years, and during that 10 years I haven't just been writing, but I've immersed myself in the writing community. I've researched, I've spent time reading books, reading blogs, interacting with writer groups, having critiques done, submitting, going to conferences, going to seminars, workshops, doing things online that have to do with writing. My journey did not start like many people who just had a love for writing when they were very, very young. I actually didn't like writing much. I never liked essays. I didn't like research papers. I would put them off to the last minute. However, somewhere around the time my second child was born, I had a whole lot of life changes. I was at home full-time for the first time. I had these two precious little babies that were mine, plus I was watching some others. And I had all these emotions wrapped up in all these really big life changes. And the most effective way I found to kind of cope and deal with and work through all those emotions was to start writing. And that's what I did, and that's where my writing journey began. Since I began that journey over 10 years ago, I have met several goals in writing. I've been published in multiple magazines, both national magazines and local magazines. I have 9 self-published books. That's if you don't include the 2 co-authored self-published books that I've written. And that's in the last just 2 years. I have one of my most recent releases as an ebook actually released as a top 5 Amazon bestseller in its category. So I've also learned a lot about marketing and book promotions that I'm excited to share with you. I also have a traditional publishing contract. When I started writing, that's the only goal I really had, was to get traditional publishing contract and go the traditional route. I never thought that I would self-publish, but in the last decade, self-publishing has really changed a tremendous amount. But I have been blessed with a traditional publishing contract, and I'm excited for that first of many books that will be published traditionally. I love this picture. This shows a big part of my life. These are my 4 children that are playing in the sand and water, and as you can see, my laptop is there in the corner. So I have a very full, busy life. Most writers have full, busy lives that they're writing around. So I don't want you to ever be discouraged that because you don't have 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day or even 3 hours a day to dedicate to writing, that you can't write and meet your goals. You can fit it in with your life no matter who the important people are in your life or your other responsibilities or obligations in life. If you have a passion to write, you can make it happen, and I'm going to help show you how to do that. Okay, so now you know how I know and that you can fit it into life. So we're going to talk about what you'll get in this 1-hour free webinar. So the first thing I hope to give you is confidence in your writing so that you can take your writing from good to better to the best that it can be. And that's the journey that I've been on in my writing career, from that very first book, that very first novel that I wrote, and taking it so that my writing actually becomes something that people enjoy reading and want to read. Tips to do that, tips to take your writing to the next level. I'm going to give you concrete ways to improve your writing. Knowing how to navigate social media. That's one thing that has changed in the last decade, is social media. It's a part of most people's everyday life, and it's a huge part of book marketing these days. Ways to market your work. So how do you get it out there? How do you get your work, once it's the best that it can be, into the hands of your reader? So we talked about that confidence really quickly. So as a craft, writing is not one of those things that you can just look at it and know, oh, this is great, or oh, this is good, or oh, I need to change this right away. I talked to an artist who did modeling things, and she was very artistic, and she could just look at a painting or something she had molded and know whether it was good or not. Writing isn't quite that easy. So we're going to look at how you have that confidence in your writing. Those tips to take your writing to the next level. We're only going to be able to cover a few of them here in the free writing webinar because there's so many elements to excellent writing, but we are going to cover some of the essential ones so that you can at least start taking those initial steps and taking your writing to the next level. Knowing how to navigate social media. I already said this has changed. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. There's so many different ways of connecting with people through social media. And we're going to talk about how that helps you as an author and how you go ahead right now, even if you haven't begun your first book, to start using those platforms for your marketing and just connecting with other writers and authors and getting into the publishing world. Ways to market your work. So as a writer, most of us would love just to write. We would love just to write and just put our books out there and have them sell and take off. And that happens probably about 1 in a million books. For the rest of us, we really have to market our work and work very diligently. And that top 5 Amazon bestseller that I shared about a few minutes ago was really all about marketing and all about reaching out and getting the word out about my book. So, are you ready to write? I hope you're ready to dive in. So we see the notebook and pencils here. Most of us use laptops, or you may have a favorite pen. I have a couple of favorite pens that I love to write with when I'm actually using paper. One thing to keep in mind is there's erasers on pencils for a reason, and there's delete on a computer for a reason. So we will enter this journey and learn things, but don't ever be afraid to erase, to throw away. I think one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do is take full sections of my books and get rid of them because they didn't enhance the story enough. So let's grab our pencils or our laptop and let's get ready for this journey. So first, I would love to talk about reasons for writing. We all have different reasons for writing. They vary from person to person. One of the first reasons that people write is just passion. They are just passionate about putting words on a paper and getting their thoughts and ideas and feelings, and it's just so welled up inside of you that you can't imagine not writing. Maybe you've been writing for 20 or 30 or 40 years and you've never been published, or maybe you have self-published but you haven't gotten where you wanted it to go. Maybe you're still seeking that traditional contract with a publisher. But no matter what, you just have this passion for writing. There are a lot of people who write for personal reasons. I would say I have a deep passion that I have grown for writing. It was not something that I was born with, but it's more something I developed. But as I shared, I had those life changes, and those were my personal reasons for starting to write. And really, I continue to write for personal reasons, for personal growth, for sharing with other people those lessons that I learn, for wanting to feed into other people's lives, and a lot of times just to continue to process those things that are going on in me. So sometimes it can be very personal, maybe telling a story, maybe telling a story to your children or grandchildren or friends. Just want to get it out there. Then we have people who write for professional reasons. So there are copy editors that write for professional reasons, marketing, advertising write for professional reasons, manuals and how-tos, and a whole scope of different genres and just areas of life that are professional writing. But also professional can be you have a desire to be a professional writer. So you may have a passion for writing and you may write for personal reasons, but you also want to be a professional writer. You want that to be your main career and your life's work. So that covers kind of the main reasons for writing. So passion, personal, and professional. As you can see, there's quite often this overlap that happens in the three. I love this graphic that I found on stuffwriterslike.com. It talks about the different reasons. And this is a little different from the personal, passionate, and professional, but the kind of more key things. We write to find out what we didn't know. We write to create. There's all sorts of different reasons why people write. So it's important to know why you're writing, because that will help you set your goals, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So to know why you write. So if you want to put in the comments on the video why you write, what is it for you that excites you about writing? You can feel free to send me a message too. Just go to tracywainwright.com and my contact page and shoot me a message. I would love to hear what your story is. So the next aspect of writing is it's very important to know what you're writing. You want to know what you're writing in the sense of, does it come from your own personal experience? My 13-year-old has gotten this bug, this passion for writing already, and about a year ago she started writing a book from the perspective of a young girl in a village in Africa. Well, she has no experience in Africa, and she's never been there, hasn't read a lot about it, so there wasn't a lot of knowledge base. We had to do some research, but when she writes from a 13-year-old girl's perspective, that's from her experience, relationships with friends, interactions with schoolwork. We homeschool, so it's not really at school. But from those experiences, she can write really well from a homeschool perspective. I can write really well from a mom's perspective, from a friend's perspective, from a stay-at-home mom, a working mom. So it's all those experiences that we have, whether it be traveling or what job we've had or family experiences. It's good to know what we're writing through experience. However, you can't always have the experiences you want to write about. My contracted novel is a mystery. Well, I'm not a police officer. I'm not a detective. I don't have any key in law enforcement. So another way to know what you're writing is to be well read. And that's well read in the genre that you're writing, and also well read about the culture that you're writing about. So like the police culture or the culture of the area geographically. So it's very helpful to be well read in what you want to write. If you want to write science fiction, but you've never read a science fiction book, it's going to be much harder to do that. If you want to write, I'm trying to come up with something. Let's see. If you want to write a young adult novel, but it's been a while since you've been a young adult and you've never read a young adult novel, then you're going to have extra challenges there. So use your experience where your experience is lacking, be well, and educate yourself. So you want to read those books in that genre. You want to read about those things you're writing about. But there's another step that often requires education. It's research. It's looking into those things. And this comes more into play, I think, with nonfiction writing, but also with fiction writing. I read a great group of books by a couple, Bodie and Brock Taney. And if you want to look them up, their last name is spelled Thoene. However, one was the writer and one was a history professor. And so he was very educated on history. And they did a phenomenal job of writing these historical novels based mostly before, during, and after World War II. But a great job of that educational background and having the information so that the books would be knowledgeable and accurate. So you may feel like you need a library like this, or maybe you feel like you have a library like this. You've done research, you've been well read in your genre, you've educated yourself in what you want to write. And just don't let it get overwhelming, because if we look at it all at once, it feels overwhelming. But remember, we just take it one book, one chapter, one page at a time. So, I said a few minutes ago that we would look at writing goals. So, let's do that. Let's look at what is our end game. We've looked at what is our prompting for writing. We've looked at how we prepare for writing. So, now let's look at our end purpose. Let's look at where we want to get. So, your writing goal may be just to entertain. There's a lot of really good books that do really well, and their job purely is to entertain their reader, to provide that escape from life and from reality, to give them a chance to pick up pieces of paper or these days their e-reader, whatever device they might be using, and just escape for a little while and be entertained. You may want to educate people. You may want to share all of those great lessons that you've learned. You may want to show them things that you have come to know. You may want to give hard knowledge about a certain culture or a way of life, or, even so, for example, this webinar is to educate. So that could be writing goals. There's lots of books out there about writing, about pretty much anything these days that you could imagine. And so maybe you want to educate people. That's a great writing goal too. We also have a writing goal of encouraging people. So there's many stories out there, and I just read one, a great book called Draw Near by Sherry Blankenship. And let me just warn you, if you go find it and pick it up, take a box of tissues with you. It's a true story. It's a memoir, but it's very encouraging. She tells the story of her daughter's battle with cancer and then other illnesses. But the way that she tells it and the way that they chose to go through those tremendous life challenges that just were obstacles that most of us wouldn't imagine how to face, much less deal with and get past, in such a way as to encourage other people who are going through challenges, other people who have experienced loss, and just even people who just need to be uplifted. So, and don't think that your writing goals can't intermix. Kind of like our purposes for writing, our goals can also mix between encouraging and educating and entertaining. A book can do all. Also, income. And for many people, this might be your key writing goal. So, okay if you entertain, okay if you educate, okay if you encourage. You just want to put something on paper that will help generate an income. And that's okay too. Many people have that goal. I have that goal. I am earning, I don't know if you call it income. I am earning money off of writing. It's not quite where I want to be, but that's okay. That gives me a goal. And so each little thing is a step on the income. And so when I first started writing, I was told it would be 5 to 10 years before I would really get published and start making money. And it really was. I'm just over 10 years now. And they were true, but that's because I did a lot of hard work and I learned by trial and error and research. And so I'm hoping to help shorten that for you by giving you all these snapshots of how to take your writing to the next level. So, what are your writing goals? I would love to know this too. Again, please feel free to comment in the comment section or shoot me a message from my website. I would love to hear from you and hear what you would like to do, whether you would like to publish 5 books in the next 10 years, or whether you would want to just finish your novel this year, or whether you would like a contract in the next 3 years, whether you have the goal of entertaining people with a cute blog, whether you want to educate people about some health and fitness idea that most people don't know about. So what are your writing goals? I'd love for you to share with me. Now, we talked about all these varying goals, but one goal that every writer has is to write well. We want to do it the best that we can do it. Now, granted, sometimes we just want to get it down on paper. But beyond that, we really want it to communicate and convey our thoughts and our feelings and our knowledge in such a way that's done where other people can understand it and really get the most out of it. And that takes writing well. And that's why our next section is the essential elements of excellent writing. So here you see just a snapshot of a few we're going to talk about today. So point of view, show, don't tell, avoid cliches and common metaphors, and grammar matters. So we're going to talk about the first one, which is point of view. This is essential for any writing, but most essential probably for fiction. So really, in nonfiction, you can write first, second, third person. You can kind of intertwine that and change that. You can say you and talk directly to your reader. You can say I and talk about your experiences. And you can say he, she, or they and talk in the third person. So that's a little bit more free-flowing, and there's a little bit more flexibility with that. However, really with fiction, one of the things that makes strong fiction today is a strong point of view. You wouldn't have seen that 10, 15, 20 years ago. You would have seen this omniscient point of view where the writer writes in a way that the reader can kind of hover above all the scenes and see everything that's going on and the thoughts of everybody and what everybody's doing equally. And that really does not work in today's publishing world. Now, this is a picture of an example. So in today's writing, to have a strong point of view, we're going to go third person with our characters. And so this is Bob. So we are in Bob's point of view. We can only see, hear, taste, touch, and smell what Bob can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. So if his wife's back at the cabin pulling an apple pie out of the oven, he cannot go, that apple pie sure does smell good. I can't wait to eat it, because he's far enough away that he cannot smell it or see his wife take it out of the oven. He might be able to hear the bubbling brook. He sees the animal that's grazing off in the distance. That's probably a cow or a horse. I'm not really sure. It's far enough, it's blurry. He may be able to smell the fish, wishing that he had his fishing pole so he could get dinner for tonight. He can feel the weight of that pack on him. But what he can't do is see someone coming up behind him. He may be able to hear somebody coming up behind him or see someone across the stream in the field there waving at him. But he can only see, feel, hear, touch, and taste the things that he physically can. And that's what it means to be in a strong point of view in your fiction novel, is you want to have this picture of where your character is and what they're doing and get your reader in with them and not give them any other perspective. The next essential element of excellent writing is show, don't tell. And I will admit to you, when I started writing, this is the one piece of advice that drove me the most crazy, because I heard it over and over and over again, but no one ever really explained what it meant. Show, don't tell. Okay, great. I would love to do that, but how? Show me how to show and not tell. And so this is one of those things I learned by trial and error along the way. So I want to prevent you from having to learn by trial and error along the way. And so I have examples. So we can tell the reader she was frightened. Okay, so we know she was frightened, but we're telling them to really help the reader feel what she's feeling. This is how we could show it. She gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth, halting any additional sound. That is, except for her racing heart, she was sure he could hear from the driveway. So we know she's frightened. We get that. She gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her heart is racing. We get she is scared out of her wits. But we didn't tell the reader that. We let them feel it with her. We let them experience it with her. And now, she was frightened. Okay, so she was frightened. But now we're in there with her. We know her heart's racing. We know someone's coming up the driveway. Apparently, he is a danger to her. And so now you're invested in this character and you want to know what is going to happen and is she going to be okay? Here's another example. He loved her. Now he knew for sure. So sweet. He loved her. He's sure of it. That's great. However, are we really invested in the fact that he loves her? Are we feeling it with him? I don't think so. So this is an example of a way we could show this instead. He couldn't take his eyes off her as she wiped sweat off her brow. No heat would keep her from serving these people, from following her call. He resisted the urge to go sweep her into his arms. It was the hardest thing he'd ever resisted. But telling her could wait. If he had it his way, they'd have the rest of their lives to say those 3 little words. And of course, we know what those three little words are. I love you, of course, but you're in it with him. You can feel the resistance of watching someone you love and just your heart exploding and just wanting to go express that by holding them and kissing them and telling them. And so we're in there feeling that with him. Now, lest you think that showing always means more words than telling, I have one more example for you. We're going to do the telling first, and this is a pretty wordy telling, so just hang in there with me. Kate couldn't believe it. How could he have lied to her? She had given him everything, had sacrificed her own career for him, and now he was leaving her for another woman. If she hadn't seen that note, hadn't come by his office unexpectedly, she may have never known. All she'd wanted to do was surprise her husband, take him on a lunch date. It had been forever since they'd done that, apparently too long. Now, I even enjoy part of this writing. However, we're telling too much. Now, we feel for Kate. We feel that she's discovered her husband's having an affair, that she just came expecting to have a great surprise and lunch with her husband. We feel that, but there's a way to get it in deeper, and that's to experience it with her. And here's how we experience it with her. And it uses fewer words. We may not get as much information, but we don't need all that information in one little spot. So here we go. Kate strode across the office to his door and peeked in. He wasn't in. She'd still surprise him. She sat in his chair grinning until her eyes landed on a slip of paper. See you at noon, darling. It wasn't her handwriting. Her hands began to shake as her eyes filled. So you see here that we're showing her discovering the note. We're showing her that he wanted to surprise him. We know it's lunchtime because the note says see you at noon, and that's why he's not there. And we feel with her the discovery of her husband's treachery. And so you're in there with her in this. And so you can see show don't tell sometimes means more words, but it doesn't always mean more words. Okay, so I think that's enough examples to give a clear idea of showing versus telling. If you have any questions about showing versus telling, please feel free to send me a message via my website. I would love to answer those questions for you. Okay, so we'll move on. We've already moved to the slide. Let's go ahead and move to avoiding cliches. So cliches are those little sayings that we hear all the time. For example, don't cry over spilt milk. So water under the bridge. You can probably think of many other cliches that we hear. Tip of the iceberg. There's so many out there and they're just overused. And so when they're used in a book, it's one of those eye-rolling moments. You're just like, okay, I've heard that 1,000 times. That's nothing new. And so you really want to absolutely do your best to avoid these cliches in your writing. Avoid common metaphors. So this is kind of the same thing when we hear these metaphors over and over and over again. They just get old. And it's sometimes hard to come up with new metaphors or creative metaphors. And my piece of advice is if you can't come up with a really good metaphor, then just leave it out. Just don't use a metaphor at all. And you'll become more skilled at using metaphors. And it's also helpful if you can use metaphors that go with the theme of your book or some kind of characteristic of your main characters. So let's say you have a firefighter. You would want to use maybe a fire metaphor or something with big trucks or, something that goes along with what their life is. Okay. So no matter what you're writing, whether you're writing a blog or you're writing a book, fiction or nonfiction, grammar always matters. If you have a great story, great characters, great information, but you are using verbs in the wrong place, or you're switching out your words, or you're using the wrong words, it's going to be very distracting to your reader. If you have too many commas, if you have commas in the wrong place, if you have an apostrophe in the wrong place, which, by the way, I'm not sure if you caught the one that I have earlier in the webinar that I need to fix, but it's distracting. So no matter what you're writing, grammar is very important, and there's lots of grammar websites that you can ask grammar questions of. And sometimes you'll get different answers, especially with commas. That probably is the one that is the most difficult, and that's because the rules have changed over time. But basically, what it boils down to is whatever you do, do it consistently. And I'll give you one other little free grammar tip, especially with fiction writing, is you do not want to overuse exclamation marks. You want the words to show that great feeling. One rule of thumb that I once heard was you want 3 to 5 exclamation marks in your entire book. So that's a little bit of grammar freebie there in Grammar Matters. Okay, so another essential element of excellent writing is using strong words. There are so many words available to us today. Sometimes I just want to sit down and read the dictionary so I can increase my vocabulary and have all these words to use. But many of these words are just very generic. If we use was or happy or walked, they don't convey a lot of feeling. And what we want to do is use as few words as possible to convey the most feeling possible. So I have an example of one verb that we can change into other verbs that mean a similar but stronger thing. Okay, so let's look at walked. Walked is one of those words that we all know what it means, but it's not very descriptive in writing. We'll just look quickly at all of these options that we have here, and this just is a few of the options. So, for example, if we use strode instead of walked, we know that someone's walking with purpose. Raced, they're in a hurry. We've got that with just one word. Sauntered, you can see the confidence, you can see the slowly moving into or across the room, and it just conveys so much more than walked. Stomped, I'm thinking somebody's upset. Trudged, someone is probably discouraged, maybe tired, had a really long day, and they're trudging across the floor. Slipped, so she slipped into the room. She was trying not to be noticed. Marched, so there's either purpose or some kind of formality there in how someone is walking. And then shuffled, so this could be someone who's older or someone who's had some kind of disability. So just with these 8 examples for replacement words for walked, you see how with one word we can convey so much instead of using walked and then saying walked slowly or walked with purpose, or whatever you want to use to convey how they walked. So use strong words is the essential element of excellent writing. Okay, so taking it to the next level, we've talked about so much so far, and we have more we're going to talk about, but there is so much about writing and writing well and marketing and platform building and publishing and agents, and there's so much to the writing world. It's almost like earning a degree. I feel like all of the research that I've done, all the books I've read, all the seminars I've taken, that I really earned a degree in writing. And so what I want to offer you is that in this microscopic way of doing a webinar. And so stay to the end, and I will have a very special offer for you so you can take it not just to the level that it's going to go after this webinar, but even higher. So like this escalator, you can, if it's not working, so you can take the steps to get up to the next level. And that is piecing those pieces together, reading those books, going to those seminars. And those things are important, but you're going to kind of be walking up the escalator. It's going to take you a while. And what we want to do is turn that escalator on. And so we want to get you to the next level quicker. So back to our webinar. So one of the things we have talked about is marketing and social media, just briefly. And in the writing world, it's so important to make connections. I know that you've probably experienced in other areas of your life how knowing people in a certain field or people with a certain specialty lends itself to benefit to everyone involved. And that's true in the writer's world as well. It's very important to make connections, and it will benefit you and the people you come in contact with. While we like to think of writing as this isolated kind of career, we might picture ourselves alone in the woods writing like this gentleman here in this picture, or snuggled up with a cup of coffee on the sofa or the back porch and very solitary in our writing. The truth of the matter is while the writing is solitary, becoming an author and publishing and really moving to the next level is not solitary at all. So, the importance of connections. These are a few of the ones that we're going to go through today. So we will start with conferences. Conferences are a great way to connect with other writers, to connect with agents, to connect with editors and publishing houses, and just to meet other writers that you can glean information off of. And usually there's regional writers conferences, there's national writers conferences that go on all over the country, and not that I've researched it, but I'm pretty confident all over the world. And so you can go to these for as little as local, maybe $100, $150, national upwards of $700, $800, $900. And for the most part, you get what you pay for. There is a lot of value in the smaller conferences as well. But the bigger conferences are usually more days. They have bigger publishing houses, bigger agents from bigger literary agencies, and more people, of course, for you to make more connections. So I highly recommend, if you can do conferences, go ahead and do it, whether it's in your genre or whether it's just a general writers conference, a local writers conference. There's going to be something that you can glean off of that. Workshops and seminars, the next one, they're both kind of a snapshot of conferences. So they'll get you the information. They're usually very focused on what kind of information they cover. However, it's rarely someone who's from an agency or someone who's from a publishing house. I have been to one with an agency before and gleaned lots of information, made a connection, met other writers. And remember, your writers that you meet along the way are going to be as essential connections to your goal of being published as meeting those agents and editors. And seminars are the same thing. They're usually something maybe a library has put together, or a private writing organization, sometimes even meetings. They'll be considered seminars because they have someone coming to talk about some aspect of writing. Many of these are even free, or maybe you've paid a $30 or $50 annual fee to participate, and you can go to these meetings that have these little seminars that touch on the one element of writing, and it'll help you with that element. So it's a matter of how much time you have to invest, and if it's a topic that you feel like you're ready for. Now, a lot of those topics I cover in the program that I offer for beginner writers. So we'll talk about that again more, but that's just another option for getting the information. It's always good to connect. It's always good. You can think of, meeting and sitting around brainstorming. I'm always so energized when I get around other writers. I just am encouraged and inspired to be around other writers who get what it means to be a writer, and they get what it takes to be a writer. And so it's just always beneficial to be around other writers. So, a lot of people can't always be going to conferences, seminars, workshops. As a stay-at-home mom, I am pretty limited in what I'm able to do going out and about. That's where other ways of connecting online come in. Blogs is a great way to connect, also with agents and editors and other writers. There are dozens and probably hundreds of blogs out there by writers, by editors, by agents. Almost every agency, almost every publishing house has a blog on their website, plus other private blogs where people just share all the wealth of information in the writing world. It just takes time. You got to hunt for it, but it's a good way to make those connections. And if you comment, you can actually kind of start to get to know some of those people in the writing world. Facebook is a great way and a great place to make connections. If you're on there utilizing that, looking up writers groups, there's writers groups that have tips and tools where you have discussions, where people share their works. So you can get to know, there are several authors that I kind of feel like I know because I've read their books and I've connected with them on Facebook. And you just start to build those professional relationships. Twitter is another place to do that. Sometimes it's more personal than Facebook, sometimes less. It kind of depends how you use it. But it's also a great place just to connect with people, to get to know their ministry, to get to know their writing, to get to know kind of the things that they do, and have a chance to interact with people and recognize their names. And then, of course, they'll recognize yours as well. Writers groups, and this could be in person or it could be online. There are options for joining a writers groups. Again, local writers groups a lot of times will meet either bi-weekly or monthly. There's writers groups online that do critiquing and do advice. And so just kind of hunt around and do a search for either your local area or your genre, and you can get in touch with other writers that are doing the same thing you're doing. Remember that connecting isn't about what you can get from other people, but it's just about making that connection, that human connection with other writers. That should be a symbiotic relationship, a give and take, that you share what you know, even if you don't think you know very much yet. You can share what experience you have, or you never know what you have to offer someone else. But it's about the relationship. It's not about what you can get out of it for what will benefit your writing career. So just keep in mind as you're making these connections that you're building relationships, and that is important. Connecting with your audience is next. Before I move on to connecting with your audience, I just want to say that was a lot of advice to connect with other people in the writing world. You're going to kind of see the same thing with connecting your audience, a lot of the same areas or ways of connecting, and it can get overwhelming. So maybe pick one. So maybe pick one place. So maybe start reading blogs and commenting on them, or maybe start following other writers on Twitter and interacting with them. So pick just one way, and then once you've got that foundation set, you're used to that, then you can pick another one of those avenues of connecting, or maybe you can slip in a conference or a seminar in there somewhere. But don't feel like you have to do it all at once. And that goes for the same for connecting with your audience. So a website. If you want to be published and sell books, one of the most helpful tools that you can have is your very own website. It's so easy to have a website today. You do not need a designer. Please go look at my website, tracywainwright.com. I went through Weebly, and the website was free. I just pay for my domain every year, and that's all my expenses. And really, that's all that it has to take. And keep in mind that your website doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be today exactly how it needs to be in a year or 2 years or 3 years. You can always make changes and adjust and improve as you go along. But you want a landing site where people can go and find out more about you and more about what you're working on. Email list. It seems like lately I'm hearing over and over and over again, have an email list, grow your email list. And this is something I didn't hear a lot when I first started writing, but it really is a great tool for connecting with your audience. Building that email list first with people you know, getting permission to email them however often, once a month, every couple of weeks, once a quarter. You can start out small, but look at when you go places, when you meet people, hey, can I add you to my email list? I would love to keep in touch with you and share what I'm doing, and would love to hear what you're doing. So that is one great way to start small, but build that audience and connect with them. Social media, of course, another great way to start connecting with your audience already. It's very easy to make your own personal Facebook page, to have your Twitter account start sharing information or tidbits or exciting things that you're doing with your writing with your audience, building that audience. There's other social media sites that I haven't even mentioned: Instagram, Pinterest, many others that seem to crop up almost every other day. But just utilize what you're already on for connecting with an audience and by sharing information that you would have in your books. So whether it's fiction, sharing about your characters that you're working on or your plot that you're working on. If it's nonfiction, just sharing information that you would share in your book, but in little snippets, of course. So you want to connect and give people something of value while you're doing that. Make sure you're focusing on giving value and not just saying, hey, I want you to follow me so you can buy my books, but here, I'm going to give you value as I go along in this journey, and I want you to come with me. So, what is most important? We're already here coming to the end of our hour together, so let's review quickly what is most important. So, education. This is educate yourself about what you're writing and what you want to write. Educate yourself about the genre, educate yourself about the geography, educate yourself about the topic or the types of characters, but also educating yourself about writing. There are certain rules and ways of doing things in the writer's world, and you really want to educate yourself about that. And that's part of what this webinar and the programs that I have are all about, is educating yourself about writing and writing well. Editing. I didn't even go into this. And even after all this time, editing is one of my least favorite things to do. I don't know if you've ever combed really long hair with a fine-tooth comb. We were talking about those cliches earlier, but it's very tedious and it's very slow progress, and you can only do a little bit at a time. And that's some days what editing feels like, is you're going paragraph by paragraph, line by line, word by word, and you're trying to make sure that every word counts and has the biggest punch that it can. And you want your writing to, as I said earlier, convey your message to your reader in the most effective way possible, and that takes editing. Now, as you become a more experienced writer, it won't take quite as much editing, but my first novel is in its 4th or 5th editing, and I still haven't gotten to the point where I really feel comfortable submitting it anywhere to anyone. But yet, what I'm working on now, I feel like might only have to go through 2 or 3 edits instead of 5, 6, 7. So remember, editing is a part of the process, and even though it's painful, it's important. Endurance. Endurance is also very important. There were many times along the way that I was just ready to give up, that I didn't want to keep writing, I didn't want to keep getting rejections, I didn't want to keep doing this hard labor where you're pouring out your heart on paper. But I knew that that's what I was called to do. And I was reminded over and over again that rejection is a part of the process. And I'm so grateful that I did endure, because now I have these books that are published and books that I'm excited about writing next, and my publishing contract and all the other experiences that I've had. And so remember that endurance is important, that you may not reach your goal today or tomorrow or next year, but that doesn't mean it's out of reach. You can do it. You just keep plugging away. I love this picture of these guys, and you can see the endurance on their faces. We have no idea how long they've been carrying this log. We can only imagine how heavy it is. Wood is a lot heavier than it looks. So you can see the strain on their faces and their muscles, but they are not giving up, and they are working together. And that really, writing can be that way too. As we talked about, a lot of it's solitary, but you build this community and you work with other people and you share the load. And so they're going to get to their destination just like you are with your writing. So what is next? I've hinted at and referred to a couple of times the programs that I have, and I love sharing information about writing and becoming an author. I hope that if nothing else is clear, that this writing gig, even though it's a lot of work, it's a lot of fun and very rewarding. And so if you're watching this webinar, then I want to make a special offer for you. And that is Paving the Pathway to Publication Beginner's Course. If you look down in the notes for the webinar, for the video, and also it will be up in a minute, there will be a link for you to register for Paving the Pathway to Publication Beginner Course for only $2.99. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, and I know it sounds overwhelming, but the normal price is $4.99, and it is a lot of information, and it's a lot less money that you would pay for most professional writers' conferences, where you would have to leave your home, spend your gas money to get there, pay for meals, find lodging, and a whole host of other expenses, with a lot of value packed into this $2.99. So maybe you're wondering, I'm still not sure. What do I get for my $2.99? What you get is to put your writing career in the HOV lane. We talked about turning the escalator on. This also can get you out of the traffic and put you in the HOV lane to get past those obstacles quicker and to learn all of those elements faster so you can put them into practice faster. So I mentioned earlier 5 to 10 years, 6 to 10 years for getting published, for starting to have an income for writing. We don't want to see that happen. We want to see it happen for you in 1, 2, 3 years. We want to cut this time in half or greater. And so the more information you can learn, the faster you can learn it, the more you can put it into place, and the quicker you can meet those writing goals. So what you get in the course, first of all, an in-depth 2-page critique. Like with show, don't tell, it was so difficult for me to learn that because people were just telling me that and they weren't really showing me how to do that. My first novel, I had no idea what was wrong with it. I didn't know what I didn't know. So what I'd love to offer you is an in-depth 2-page critique. So you send me the first 2 pages of your manuscript. You don't have to start halfway down the page. This is 2 full pages, 12 font, double spaced, and I will critique that for you to hopefully help encourage you on that, making your writing better and the best that it can be. You also get 5 one-hour sessions. So we've almost spent an hour today. You can see how much information we've covered. Well, each one of these 1-hour sessions in the Paving the Pathway to Publication has even more information in it. So they're jam-packed with tons of information to help you really move into that HOV lane and get to your destination of publication faster. So there's 5 of those sessions. This is what we cover in those sessions. Genres. We look at the different genres. What are the different rules? If you want to write children's fiction or young adult fiction or historical fiction or fantasy or inspirational fiction, there are different rules for each one of those genres. So we go over that. I go over that. I've done the research. I have pulled that together for you so you can see the differences and kind of delineate between what they are, what the different genres are, and what's expected in each one. We go over critiques. Why are critiques essential? How do you get critiques? What do you do when you get a critique and you see every 4th line with a comment or a strikeout or some kind of change that your critique partner is going to make? So we talk about that whole entire process and how it's essential to writing and becoming a really well-written author. We talk about making connections. We have talked about that today. I give you even more resources for doing that and encourage you to do so. So you'll actually be held accountable and you can let me know, okay, I've made this connection or I'm taking these steps. So we'll talk about that even more in depth because we really have just begun. So if you look at the writing process, becoming an author is the alphabet. So A to Z. This webinar really has only taken you from A to B to probably C. And so what we want to do is we just want to get you more and more information because there's a certain number of combinations of words you can make with A, B, and C. But the more of the alphabet we get, the more words you can make and the more information you have as in becoming an author, the more success you'll have. excellent writing. We looked at about 4 tips of excellent writing today, and really there's so much more to making sure you write really well, and we will get in that in depth so that you will have that confidence, so you will know that your writing is done well, and you don't just have those 4 elements of good writing, but you have all of the elements of good writing. I'm reminded of a banana split. So a banana's good, and I like a banana and it's healthy, but boy, you put that ice cream on it, those 3 different flavors of ice cream, that's good too. And so, but we don't want to leave it just with that. We want a little bit of caramel and a little bit of nuts and a little bit of whipped cream and a little bit of chocolate syrup. And so we want all of those elements, because otherwise we just have a banana, or we just have ice cream, or we just have whipped cream. But you put all those elements together and you see it makes this wonderful dessert concoction. And that's what we want with all the excellent writing tips, is we want them all to work together to make this great story. Building strong characters. It's so important to know the characters in your stories and to make them 3-dimensional and to make them strong so that your reader is engaged in that. So we talk about, how do you do that? How do you make these characters that jump off the page and tug at the heart of your reader? Editing and revising. We said editing is one of the most important things to remember. We'll talk about how to do that. Not only why it's important, but how do you do it and how do you utilize it to really take your writing in the HOV lane. Conferences and workshops, we've hit on that. We'll look at that more. There's so much more to know about connecting with other writers, connecting with agents and publishers and editors through conferences and workshops. So we'll cover that more in depth as well. You've just gotten a glimpse today. So you're looking out the window from across the room. So you've seen a little bit of the landscape. And so what we'll do in the Paving Pathway of Publication is we'll walk to the window so that we can see more of the landscape on these topics. Same thing with social media. We're going to look more into that and how to utilize it effectively so that it's not stealing your time and it's not taking your time away from writing, but that you can utilize it for your benefit and to connect with others. So I hope that you will join me on Paving the Pathway to Publication Beginner's Course. It really is chock full of practical, easy to execute steps that will take you to the next level of your writing career. You can sign up today. Here's the link here. I hope you can join me. If you have questions, please feel free to email me at tracy_wainwright@yahoo.com, or again, you can go to my website and go to the contact page. Maybe you want a glimpse of what else is offered in the beginner course, or maybe you have a question about when you can take the beginner course or how it works. Feel free to contact me. But basically, when you buy this course, you buy access to all 5 sessions, and you get the 2-page critique and my contact information, my email, and everything, so you can ask questions. And so I really hope that you're able to join me, because I'm so excited to share the rest of the landscape with you. And I want to say just thank you for coming. I know an hour is a precious, precious amount of time, and we are almost completely at that hour. I also want to say I would love your feedback. What do you think about this webinar? Did you find value in it? Was there some question about writing or publishing that you were just burning to know and I didn't have time to include that, or you would like to see that in the future? Or maybe you can even tell me what you want to make sure that Paving the Pathway to Publication has. It might even already be in there, chances are, since it's 5 hours of jam-packed teaching. So I'd love your feedback. I would love to know what you think. Be kind is all I ask. So if you have constructive criticism, I take that. I'm used to it as a writer. We get it all the time, but there's a way to do that in a kind way. And if you benefited from this, I just want to say I'm so happy to be with you on this journey, and please share this webinar with your friends or family members who show an interest in writing, who want to learn more about writing, who want to take their writing to that next level. They're loving writing, but they want to become an author. And I'm just grateful that I'm going to get to know you if I don't know you already, and that you joined me on this journey. And so I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to finding out more about your journey. Thank you so much.